meeting on October the 7th. It is now 4:02 p.m. Let the record reflect that Vice Mayor Tyrone Hampton is present, Mayor Terry Tornick is present, and Mr. Madison, Councilmember Madison, will not be able to join us tonight. The first item on the agenda is public comments not on the agenda. So I'd ask the city clerk if she would share if there are such items.
Oh, there are no public comments for this special meeting that are not on the agenda. We do have
for the record, go ahead.
We do have public comment for item 1 and item 2.
Thank you. And for the record, let the record reflect that City Manager Steve Mermel, Chief Assistant City Attorney Javon Rod, and Valerie Flores, Recording Secretary from the City Clerk's Office, with us this afternoon. The first item is the approval of the minutes, and I'd ask that we have a motion and a second from my colleagues for that purpose.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and properly second. Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Hampton,
Yes.
Mayor Tornick,
Yes.
Chair Kennedy.
Yes, thank you. We'll be moving at a rapid pace today because I know some of you would like to listen to or watch the debate, if I have it correctly. And we don't normally go more than 90 minutes. If we could cut that down a little bit, I'd greatly appreciate it. That is to staff and to all of us as well. This is serious business, but I think we can do it in that time frame. Old business is discussion of potential process for appointment of members of Community Police Oversight Commission. We have had some discussion at the council level that has been very important and reflective of various council members' constituencies, providing input to that part of the newly adopted ordinance for the community oversight of the Pasadena Police Department. So at this time, if I hear no reservation, I'd like to ask Mayor Terry Tornick, who has been meeting with a number of groups and individuals and nonprofits to help us through this process without any concern about any one member interrupting the mayor and providing input, even as I will call upon you separately. So Mayor, if you'd do a quick recap of where we are and provide some elocution or information that may be helpful for this discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I only have a couple of brief suggestions. I think that there's tremendous interest in this matter, and there are a lot of people, I'm sure all of you have been hearing from people who are interested in finding out how they can apply for and be appointed to the Community Oversight, Police Oversight Commission. And I think it would be incumbent upon the council to develop the application process as quickly as we can. There are three areas that I think have been the subject of most attention on the part of both the City Council and the general public. The first, and perhaps the easiest, is the nature of the application form. As both of you know, we have a standard application form that everyone fills out when they are interested in serving on one of our 24 commissions. There have been some specific suggestions, and we got some letters in today's correspondence that's already been posted by the city clerk's office with regard to some suggestions about particular areas of expertise that might be sought in applicants for this particular position, this commission. And so my only comment on this subject, Mr. Chair, is that I think we should contemplate a somewhat expanded application form that would allow people to identify any particular experience or expertise in the area of concern as it relates to the areas of activity of this proposed commission, newly created commission, because I think it would be helpful in terms of evaluating what individuals would bring to the table in terms of their service on that commission. So I think this is a relatively easy one, and asking staff to expand the application form to identify expertise in the areas of both specifically police activity and law enforcement, but also with regard to social justice issues and mental health issues, are the ones most frequently referenced as being a valuable area of expertise that individuals might have.
Vice Mayor Hampton? Vice Mayor Hampton?
Yes, sorry about that.
No
I
problem.
was trying to, maybe, Mayor, you could elaborate a little bit more about what you meant by that in the application. Are you thinking that this should be a box that is checked for applicant? Or is this something that is going to be another box for the application form, but you still have the wherewithal or ability as a council member to pick who you choose to pick?
Yeah, no, I think it's still within the purview of each council member to make their selection. The suggestion is simply that it's not about, some of it may be box checking, but in the application form, there's room for the applicant to fill in specific expertise or life experience that might be pertinent to the consideration of that application. So it's really just a matter of providing, since that application form is a
Excuse me, is there a reason why there is such feedback? This is the staff or the mayor, because the mayor is talking, so.
Councilmember, it may be helpful for the other members of the committee, if you're not the one speaking, to mute your microphones. We may be picking it up from the other members when one member is speaking.
Okay, thank you. Please continue, Mayor.
Yeah, it's not a matter of dictating who gets selected, but a matter of making sure that people have an opportunity and to describe the relevant both life experience and professional training and other volunteer experience that they may have that would be relevant to understanding what they would bring to the police commission.
You have the floor, Vice Mayor.
Yeah, okay. I was just trying to figure that out because I just don't want to have something on the application that prohibits someone from applying because they don't have experience in the mental health field or they don't have experience, that type of experience, but they have experience in, dealing with the police department and either it be a positive interaction or a negative interaction.
Oh, exactly. It's exactly as you say, I think, in terms of trying to draw out what experience they do have and why they would bring value, value add to the commission. Because hopefully we'll wind up with a balanced commission that has a variety of expertise and experiences. And so it's simply a matter of making sure that the application form gives people an opportunity to showcase what they have to offer.
As the Vice Mayor continues to ask any question that he has, I would like to give a particular kudos to him for his leadership and helping us arrive at this place where we are today. He was steadfast in his concerns, and the whole council heard those concerns. And as you continue with any questions that you have, Vice Mayor, I just want to say thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Oh, I did have a couple other. I think the mayor said that there were 3 points of concern. He only got to one.
Right. If you like, I'd like to sort of go through them quickly, and then we can circle back around, Vice Mayor, to see if there's other stuff that you think is the most.
That's fine. Or I think it may make the meeting a little quicker since we're trying to get out. If it's okay if you go to your second point, and then
Yeah.
if I have questions to your second point, is that
Yeah,
fine?
yeah,
Okay, thank
let me,
you.
let me reveal what the second and third categories are, so you're not wondering. The second category has to do with the process by which each of the council members will select their appointees. And the third point has to do with or the third area of discussion has to do with the methodology for the community-based organization, the three slots that have been identified for community-based organization. So those are the three general areas. So with regard to the city council appointees, well, they're all city council appointees, but the three that are specifically appointed by the each council member and the mayor.
No. 8.
Yeah,
You said 3.
no. I'm talking about the 8 now. The 3 are the community-based ones.
Got it, but that's not what you said. Just want to help.
With regard to the 8, this is typical of other commissions in the city. Each city council member gets to appoint a commissioner. The suggestion has been, and we did discuss this once before, and we got pushback from Council Member Madison, but I want to raise it again because it's a recurring item. And that is, there has been strong expressions of interest on the part of people in the community to have the council members interview their applicants publicly, before they make their appointments. The current process that each of us goes through is that we solicit applications or we get unsolicited applications. We interview the applicants. We talk with other people about what they put on their application or if they know them, and then we simply put it on the agenda for council approval. We nominate the person, and it's fairly perfunctory. The council, occasionally it hasn't been exactly perfunctory, but for the most part, if a council member has a nominee, the rest of the council affirms that and votes the applicant onto the appropriate commission. In this instance, the suggestion is that because this commission is somewhat unique and the public is very much focused on the people that will be serving on it, the suggestion has been made that each council member would still have absolute authority in terms of selecting their nominee, but that rather than simply popping a name on an agenda, that it would be useful if the council member did his or her vetting or interviewing of the applicant in a public setting, not a public meeting that necessarily required public comment from people observing, but much like when the council fills the seat of a council member who hasn't completed his or her term, that's a public session, that it would be useful in terms of gaining public understanding of the nominees and gaining confidence in them, that it would be useful to have that interviewing session in public. So that Councilmember Madison, I won't speak for him, but when this came up before, he didn't seem enthusiastic about it. But I think it's worth discussion to either urge council members to do their interviewing in public, or even to require council members to do it in public, depending on the reaction of our colleagues. John, you're muted.
Vice Mayor? Thank you.
So I don't necessarily have a preference on how selection is being taken, whether it's publicly or not publicly. My suggestion originally, and I'm going to stick with that, since I have my own choice in how to do that, was to have the 3 organizational groups vet someone and then give me a list of names that I can interview from there. Okay. And so that's how I'm personally going to do it. So having a public process, however those nonprofits put that list together for me, that's fine. But I do think, since we're talking about the list of nonprofits, something I wanted to add in, that one of the nonprofit picks has to be someone in, I don't know, I mean, I guess, yeah, 50% of the board can be women. I don't know if that's even legal, but that one of those individuals have to be someone between the age range. How old do you have to be a commissioner, by the way? I don't even know. Is there an age range? I mean, can you be 15 and be a commissioner?
I don't know.
Javon, can you help us here? I don't recall the age requirement.
Councilmember Kennedy, I don't, off the top of my head, know of a particular limitation for committees generally, and definitely it's not in the ordinance for this particular committee.
Okay. So I think you have great latitude, Vice Mayor Hampton.
So I was just saying someone under the age of whatever the police department has its most interaction with, whatever age range that is, or within the age range. I believe the age range is between 18 and 23. So there should be someone on the commission that is in between that age range. And that's my opinion, and I think that has to be one of the community picks, for my opinion. But I'm only one city council member. But I do think that that's the reason why I was asking questions about the criteria, because if you've been mistreated, or I'm not saying you have axe to grind or anything like that, but you want to literally make a change, make a difference in your neighborhood or in your city, to say that you have to have this list of criteria, or you have to have a PhD from Caltech or something like that to be on this, I mean, it would just narrow the pool down to a lot smaller source. So, I mean, I just wanted to mention that on the item number 2, and hopefully that's something that's noted that comes back to the council as a suggestion, because ultimately we're putting this in place to instill transparency, but also bridge the gap between the community that just has no trust in law enforcement.
Okay.
What I would say, Vice Mayor, is that the process that you've described, that you think that you'd like to pursue with regard to your individual selection, is the process that I was going to bring forward with regard to the 3 community-based organization slots. And that is, rather than have the council try to identify among and between the various, to pick people from each organization, the suggestion that is sort of a hybrid or a variation of what you just described, is to identify a panel of community-based organizations that would bring forward a list of, I would suggest, 6 nominees to represent community people, and the council would select the 3 community-based people from that list, vetted by this panel of 6. It sounds like that's what you plan on doing for your individual selection, but that was going to be the suggestion I brought forward for the 3 community-based organization selections.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely fine with that and good with it. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I always make the assumption that the community-based organizations are going to do that anyhow, but they could have just not gotten together and made their own pick. So I do appreciate that that you're going to make that a criteria of the community organizations. And do we know what those organizations are going to be yet, or is that?
Well, I think we'll have to agree on a list. We'll ask the organizations to apply, and then the council will have to still make that selection. But the assumption is that these would be organizations that have been active in the community in the area of police reform and oversight, and social justice issues, and that have some standing in the community. We moved away from the nonprofit label because that started to get technical and might have disqualified certain organizations, which we weren't after. But that panel, it seems to me, could involve, you know, a variety of community organizations, a wide variety, and then they would solicit applications with the city's help, and they would interview the applicants and bring forward. I was thinking 6 for the 3 slots, because I don't want to be in the position of trying to pick, you know, the applicant from NAACP versus the applicant from Endelon or the applicant from, you know, the CCC. I mean, that's not what, we shouldn't be pitting one organization against another. So if they vet the applicants collectively and they give us a universe of 6 to pick from, then we should be able as a council to pick 3 of those 6. I think that would be a good way to handle that. But it sounds like that's what you intend to do for your slot, you know, for your individual.
Well, yeah, I figured it just makes it a lot easier, and you know, and they're already picking someone, and hopefully they, you know, pick a few people that live within my district boundaries, because that's also a criteria that I have, just on a personal note, that I like to try to pick commissioners that live within my district boundaries.
Right.
But I do want to say, and you know, I think that I got a lot of feedback from my pushback originally to the community groups, because it was you know, I was neither here nor there about that, and actually kind of said I don't think that they necessarily need 3 seats. And so the reason why I had said that originally, and I feel like I need to make it clear, because I've made it clear with everyone, is because most of the organizations and most of the community groups, as much as I love and respect each and every one of them, they're the same people in all of the groups.
There is overlap.
You know, like there's a major overlap. If you're working for Endelon, or you're working for the NAACP, or you're working for POP, I mean, sometimes there's an overlap from people that are, you know, intertwined with a lot of different groups and wear a lot of different hats. And that's the reason I had reservations towards these groups. Now, I do think the groups should be working together, but you know, when it's the same 5 people or 10 people or 20 people in each and every room, then they just happen to be the same group. But that was just, you know, I just had to make that statement publicly.
All right, well, Mr. Chairman, that's as far as I got with this, and
Oh, you said 3. That was only 2.
No.
Did I miss the 3rd?
No. The second one was the individual council members, public and, you know,
okay.
whether it should be a public session, and the third one was the 3. No, that was for the 8, and then this is for the 3. So it's really just the application form, whether the council members should do their selection in public, and then how the 3 community-based people are selected. That's it.
I'm so sorry. I just had one that I mentioned before in a council meeting, and I know that, you know, I just need to, you know, be clear and just let you know my preference is that the idea of a police officer serving on this body, to me, does not instill that level of trust or transparency into the process. Now, these meetings are public, so anybody who wants to come and watch these meetings can definitely watch the meetings and see what's going on in the meetings. But having a vote at the table when it comes to what the community believes is in best interest for the community, having an officer in that position, in my opinion, is not the appropriate place.
What about if, Vice Mayor, they were former law enforcement?
You know, I have great relationships with a lot of former law enforcement, but I just have to say that I think right now where we're at and where we've been for the past 8 years, or maybe even longer than that, probably. I mean, I'm just thinking of the time that I've been serving in elected capacity. There has been a distrust for law enforcement in general, or authority in general, and there's been a distrust in the city as a whole. So I think making this a community oversight, which it's emphasized community. I mean, not saying that police officers aren't part of this community, because they definitely are, and I know I could name 20 that were extremely impactful in my life, and I'll start with Rodney Wallace, right? I mean, extremely impactful in my life. but I understand where my neighbors are coming from when they say, we're trying to build, put some more oversight, put some, put the community in the police department. Community members aren't beholden to police officers or anything like that, or the PPOA or anything like that. So I would just say, not saying the PPOA, but any officer or organization that, I'm adamant about, not having this, just my preference. And I think one that is, I've definitely heard loud and clear from each and every community member I've talked to about it.
Well, you bring up a good point, particularly because he has had a positive impact in your life, and Rodney Wallace, former lieutenant, Pasadena Police Department. If he had such in your life, I suspect he has the same in a number of other young people's lives. And so if we take the logical extension of where you're going, Rodney, who has still a lot of ideas on how we can improve the police department, would not be able to provide those ideas as a commissioner, but certainly he would be able to provide them as a member of the community. So are you hard and fast on not having any current or former law enforcement person serve on the commission?
Absolutely, and I think that Rodney Wallace is someone, and I only mention his name because I have the utmost respect for him, and I admire him as an individual, and also for everyone in my generation who came up that had a different outlook on what policing was. I mean, I just never saw him as a police officer. I just saw him as the guy who lives down the street from me, and he's just super cool all the time at the football games and everything, and I'm just engaged in this community, and he is a big part of this community because since I've been on the school board and since I've been on the city council, I've been going to every graduation. You know who I see at each and every graduation? It's Rodney Wallace. He's at each and every one. So I do believe, I'm only mentioning his name because that's the person that comes to my mind of someone that's extremely impactful in this community that has served this community in that capacity. I do think that Rodney Wallace's place could serve as someone that the commission uses as an advisor. I could see that, but have him as a point of a seat or someone that the police department actually, when it comes to one of the items that's going to be coming up next, having him as someone that the police department is actually using as an advisor and how to actually engage young people and change their directory. Definitely, but a place and a seat at the commission, I think it's just, right now we're trying to build trust. And until we get that trust, I don't think a police officer being on the commission or a former police officer being on the commission is going to help us with doing what exactly we're trying to do. Or at least what I'm trying to do.
So, Mr. Chair, the ordinance currently is silent on whether or not a council member could recommend a police officer or a former police officer as her nominee. The ordinance is silent on the issue. It was raised during the course of the discussion. I happen to share Vice Mayor's position on that, but as it stands now, that's outside of the purview of this immediate discussion in terms of how the selection process would move ahead. If a council member wanted to appoint a retired police officer or a police officer who might serve in another jurisdiction or something, as I understand it, unless Javon can correct me if I'm wrong, that would be permitted the way the ordinance is written.
Mayor, they can nominate. It would be up to the council to appoint.
Council would have to approve, yeah. So there would be a discussion, Vice Mayor. If I appointed a police officer and that was my recommendation to the council, you could raise an objection at the time of came to the council for approval, and if you could get 5 votes, that person would not be approved. That's true.
Okay, so we can move right along. If there's nothing more critical that we need to get to on item 1, I would ask the city clerk to read the comment.
James Farr, Pasadena resident. Thank you for collectively moving the needle forward on police oversight. Today, as you discuss the formation of the commission and who will serve on it, I implore you to consider appointing a professional with experience in the disability and mental health services. Prior to the pandemic, it was estimated that 1 in 5 people were diagnosed with a mental health condition. Since COVID, experts now say that percentage has jumped to 60% of the population suffering from mental health diagnosis. September 30th was the 4th year since the homicide of Mr. Reginald Thomas Jr. After reading the released compelled officer statement from a responding PPD, the public was provided a rare lens into the officer's thinking, behavior, and use of force. Not once did he acknowledge that Mr. Thomas was in crisis and in need of help. Since the world is reimagining and looking at new normals, it's time Pasadena police do the same when rolling out on calls for service involving this population. I encourage Chief Perez to consider implementing the San Antonio PD model when responding to calls of service. Kenichi Yoshida, Pasadena resident. I am a Japanese immigrant, a father, husband, faith leader, and higher education administrator. I continue to join with Pasadena residents to demand that the selection process of oversight commissioners must include representation by African Americans and Northwest and Central Pasadena residents, those who possess most negative perceptions of policing, while it excludes representation by police officers, which results in serious conflict of interest. Furthermore, we demand that the Police Oversight Commission should be chosen by community organizations who have demonstrated commitment to police oversight. Thank you. Pastor Curran Manning, Pasadena resident. To our esteemed committee, as a pastor and one responsible for giving an account for others, I understand the importance of your next steps. We've been praying for civilian police oversight for quite a while. Furthermore, our citizens have asked for the right to be represented in the process of accountability with the PPD. Our chief has publicly said that he concede to the people's desire, even replacing himself. We may not need a new chief, but we definitely need an added tier of oversight in a time when people of color are disproportionately being killed at the hands, guns, and knees of police officers. Our own PPD has not been exempt from this inexcusable practice. Now you must ensure that this new process is not tainted. You must not allow police, past, present, or future, to serve on this commission. Doing so would be like the church allowing priests to monitor and discipline their fellow priests who violate both parishioners and law. This widens the chasm between police and community caused by historical mistrust and verifiable mistreatment of residents of color. Let reasonable, community-minded citizens serve. The single change could save lives and establish one Pasadena, our ultimate goal. Breathe justice. Council members, walk in the community's shoes for a moment. You believe you're a victim of police misconduct. You fear complaining directly to the police. You learn of a new community-based police oversight commission that investigates cases like yours. Then you realize the commission includes police officers. You decide to submit your complaint. The issue is never addressed, and PPD continues policies that deepen the police community divide. Can you see how installing police officers on the commission to oversee the police presents a conflict of interest and sabotages community trust? Police influences permeates the Oversight Commission via police training and substantial police union contributions to council members appointing commissioners. Moreover, the chief of police has ultimate authority with no obligation to enact commission recommendations. To function independently, enhance police-community relations, and build community trust, the Police Oversight Commission must restrict current and former police officers and their representatives from membership, equitably apply the same restrictions the ordinance places upon attorneys to police officers, prioritize commission appointment to African Americans, Northwest and Central Pasadena residents, communities most in need of improved police-community relations, per 2016 study. Choose commissioners who demonstrate commitment to police oversight and strong understanding of the importance of upholding civil rights and civil liberties in policing. Donna Sider, Pasadena resident. I strongly support the work of Breathe Justice and echo their statements. Sonia Burnett, Pasadena resident. I am a Pasadena resident and a retired state prosecutor. Thank you for considering these suggestions regarding appointments to the Community Police Oversight Commission. First, the commission must be made up of persons who believe that oversight of the PPD is necessary. This must be a litmus test. If someone is appointed who believes no oversight is necessary, that person has an actual bias against the very oversight he or she is supposed to be conducting. Second, current and former police officers and their representatives need to be excluded from appointment due to their inherent bias. PPD officers must be excluded from appointment for the additional reason that they have a conflict of interest. The ordinance bans attorneys from appointment if he or she or their law firm has a pending case against the PPD due to conflict of interest. A PPD officer has the same conflict of interest. How can that person be objective in finding misconduct if someone he or she works with? Finally, the commission needs to include persons with investigatory or litigation experience who will be able to critically review reports to identify gaps in information and who will identify problems with the ordinance so they can be resolved with amendments. Florence A., Pasadena resident. Good afternoon, everyone. We are at a new place. Pasadena is about to have a commission of diverse people at a table from around our city working and making the Pasadena police accountable, not just to people of color, especially, but every resident in the city. One of the most important aspects of this commission will be the training they will receive and to read the ordinance that is only police training is to lose that very point of the commission. So I ask you to strongly add training that brings equity and culture sensitivity for all the voices in the commission, where commission members uncomfortably learn that they will be facing from our community, not from privileged lenses or from I know it all because I know the streets. Please research the two trainings that are presented, Crossroads Anti-Racism Organization and Trainings, and Trauma-Informed Training, both great organizations that will bring a lot to the table. We must make this commission succeed and maybe be a model to others in rebuilding the bridges of trust that has been broken so many times over the past years with Pasadena police. James Clark, Pasadena resident. Members of the Police Oversight Commission must represent the entire community of Pasadena, not law enforcement or economic interests. The police cannot police themselves. Their inability to do so is the entire reason for civilian oversight. Jasmine Richards, the Oversight Pasadena resident. The Oversight Committee should have subpoena power. In regards to selection, each council district should vote on a representative to be placed on the committee. Then City Council should be allowed 3 seats. The people of Pasadena should be able to select their own representatives to the committee, which should constitute the majority of seats. because the purpose of the committee is to be as external as possible and to increase trust from the community as much as possible. Allowing the communities of Pasadena to have a larger say in the appointees will provide a stronger foundation to create a true environment of community-based oversight, rather than an internally selected oversight whose conflicts of interest could negatively impact the effectiveness of each committee. Please increase the selection of representatives from the communities of Pasadena. Please increase the selection of representatives from the communities of Pasadena, as that will increase the efficiency and integrity of the committee. A majority of community selected seats will create a stronger foundation for this committee. Adriana Bautista, Pasadena resident. The number of seats selected by community members needs to increase. The people of Pasadena are looking for a committee that reflects the interests of the community and not of the internal city structure. The number of seats appointed by city council should be swapped by the number of seats selected by the community, meaning the community should select 7 seats, 1 per council district, and the city council should select 3 seats. City council has a conflict of interest to protect Pasadena Police Department's interests, provided by the way they have not been questioning their spending power to increase surveillance technology, even when PPD's own staff is unable to answer basic questions about said technology and with their approval of a tank. City council is more easily influenced and swayed by PPD's reports, statements, and even lack of answers than community input. City council will be doing a service to themselves and the city at large to put the power in the hands of the people by means of voting. Do not steer away from this option due to cost factors. Invest in democracy. It can be lost or sidelined entirely if you do not properly invest in it.
Just a moment. City Manager, can you please share with the committee and those who are watching by television if we have a tank, TANK, as equipment in the Pasadena Police Department?
Councilmember Kennedy, we have no such equipment. I think I've reported previously, maybe about 8 or 9 years ago, the city was offered a vehicle called an MRAP. That's an armored personnel carrier. Some cities have accepted that type of equipment. We rejected it and sent that back to Washington or wherever it was deployed from.
Thank you very much. Please continue, Madam Clerk.
I'm sorry. Do you mind if I ask a question?
Go ahead.
What's the big black truck then? What's that called?
Sure, that's the Bearcat, and I can ask the chief to explain, but my understanding that's I think a police type vehicle. I don't believe we received that from the federal government, but here's the chief of police, John Perez, to clarify
Is it
that.
bulletproof? Is it bulletproof?
Yes.
I think, I don't know if the correspondence we're getting is that what they're calling a tank, or if there's something else that's literally a tank that police officers use, but
We do have, the Bearcat vehicle is used for barricade suspects, hostage situations, and similar instances where it's important to provide that level of security and safety to officers responding to an incident. But in terms of receiving military equipment, as I understood the question, the answer I gave previously regarding the MRAP would be the appropriate response.
perfect, thank you. That was it.
Thank you very much. Please continue, Madam Clerk.
Okay, the next public comment is from Anna Derby, Pasadena. As the discussion on the future structure of police oversight in Pasadena continues, it is crucial that the council sets forth plans for true oversight of police force in this city. Vice Mayor Hampton's plan for oversight, inclusive of a charter amendment to house the inspector outside of city governance, is the plan that the residents of Pasadena want to see enacted. Given that we are beyond the deadline to place an amendment on the November 3rd election ballot, City Council needs to prove that their commitment to true, powerful, independent, and transparent oversight is of utmost importance by exploring other options which would allow for real police oversight to be enacted in our city. It is beyond time to protect our BIPOC neighbors from the kind of systematic police brutality which we are witnessing across this country, and Pasadena is far from an exception. Just 2 months ago, Anthony McLean was shot and killed by Officer Duma Gwendon simply because he ran from a traffic stop. Pasadena needs to heal, and the only way to do so is making structural change to how this city's police force interacts with people they're sworn to protect. Chris Schauser Dunn, Pasadena resident. I am an active member of the Coalition for Increased Civilian Oversight. We want to affirm the position in the Community Bill of Rights that the selection process of Police Oversight Commission members and the independent police auditor must be transparent. The City Council and staff should actively solicit representatives of the community most impacted by police violence to participate in that process. To ensure the success of the Oversight Commission in achieving its goals, we believe commissioners, as a group, should possess the following experiences or qualities: understanding of how police officer associations might impact policing, understanding the vision and role of the Police Oversight Commission and how its work might positively impact all of Pasadena's residents, understanding how to evaluate reports that measure the effectiveness of the Commission's work, demonstrating leadership in the community. Individuals who have a felony or misdemeanor record should not be excluded from applying to serve on the Community Police Oversight Commission. In addition to training prescribed in the ordinance, we recommend the following training: Crossroads Anti-Racism. And there's a website, www.crossroadsanti-racism.org. Live Above the Hype, Trauma-Informed Training, www.crackgeneration.com. Thank you. The next comment is from David Chavez, Pasadena resident. I am writing to echo the sentiments by community organizations like CICOPP, POP, Breathe Justice, and Black Lives Matter Pasadena, that the selection of the Community Police Oversight Commission members must be a transparent process and involve members of communities most impacted by police violence. Applicants for commissioner positions should demonstrate qualifications or experiences, including: 1, represents or demonstrates knowledge of the experiences of limited English speakers, persons experiencing homelessness, those of us without homes, and or people living with mental illness and or substance use disorders. 2, represents one or more of the following communities: Black, Indigenous, persons of color, immigrant, refugee, LGBTQ, youth, faith, business, and other communities reflecting the overall demographics of Pasadena residents. Experience in law enforcement oversight. This is 3. Experience in law enforcement oversight, police accountability, organizing community engagement, social justice, training, and or other disciplines important to the Pasadena Oversight Commission and community. 4, must not be spouses of or themselves current, former law enforcement officers, city or county prosecutors, or work for either carceral institutions. Additionally, I am calling for a local plebiscite to take place where community members can vote for their police oversight commissioners, instead of leaving it up to the hands of a city council that collectively has accepted over $100,000 of campaign donations from the Pasadena Police. The next one is Julietta, Pasadena. I am an active member of Pasadena's Organizing for Progress, POP. We believe the Police Oversight Commission member selection process needs to be transparent and that members of communities most impacted by police violence should be encouraged to participate and actively recruited to apply. We believe for the Oversight Commission to be successful, applicants for commissioner appointment should demonstrate they have some of the following experiences. Our goal is to ensure the Community Police Oversight Commission as a whole adequately possesses these qualities: experience working effectively with diverse populations, ability to develop consensus and create positive change in organizations, knowledge of policing policies and procedures, including those related to searches and seizures, collection and release of information, use of force, and professional accountability. Demonstrates experience in dealing with different aspects of the criminal justice system, demonstrates experience in creating and the ability to articulate firm ideas for creating a culture of policing that is community-based, effective, and constitutional. Understands local government and how city departments function in relation to one another. Thank you for your consideration. Ed Washaka, Pasadena. I am speaking on behalf of the Coalition for Increased Civilian Oversight and Pasadenans Organizing for Progress. We want to affirm our previous demands that the selection of Community Police Oversight Commission members must be a transparent process that involves individuals most impacted by police violence. To ensure active engagement by members of the most impacted members of our community, we propose the creation of a panel composed of representatives from community-based organizations who will interview and nominate the applicants for 3 community-appointed commission members. We also propose that the candidates nominated to fill the community positions, as well as the candidates nominated by the mayor and city council, should go through a city council confirmation process that is entirely transparent and includes a public meeting. Additionally, we propose that this commission meet twice per month like the Planning Commission, and that commissioners be paid a stipend. Such frequency of the commission meetings is critical to accomplishing the foundational work for oversight success. Providing a stipend will encourage participation from all economic sectors of the community. Thank you. Kimberly Douglas, Pasadena. I am an active member of Pasadenans Organizing for Progress. Our organization asserts that the selection of Community Police Oversight Commission members must be a transparent process and involve members of communities most impacted by police violence. To ensure the Oversight Commission achieves its objectives, we strongly recommend the following criteria should be considered when assessing applicants for all 11 commissioner positions. Our goal is to ensure that the Community Police Oversight Commission as a whole adequately represents and possesses these qualities. Applicants for commissioner positions should demonstrate qualifications or experiences as follows: represents or demonstrates knowledge of the experiences of limited English speakers, persons experiencing homelessness, those of us without homes, and or people living with mental illness and or substance use disorders. Represents one or more of the following communities: Black, Indigenous, persons of color, immigrant, refugee, LGBTQ, youth, faith, business, and other communities, reflecting the overall demographics of Pasadena residents. Experience in law enforcement oversight, police accountability, organizing community engagement, social justice, training, and or other disciplines important to the Pasadena Oversight Commission and community. Thank you for your consideration. And that concludes public comment.
For the record, I'm making a request of the city clerk's office that the comments related to how we are going to constitute the commission, that those comments be provided in the packet on Thursday evening to the whole council. I think that would be helpful. I'm sorry that we don't have lots of time between now and that time, but I think it would be most helpful if all of the council had those comments in one location. It may be easy to do so, given the fact that I believe most, if not all of the comments have already been received by the council as a whole. but it'd be good that they be in the packet. Do you think that?
Will do.
Can do that for us?
Yes, we'll make sure that happens.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions of the committee? If not, I'd like to move to Project Prevent for our community youth. I would welcome the city manager to have staff make the presentation.
Thank you, Councilmember Kennedy. In a moment, I'll turn it over to Police Chief John Perez, who's going to introduce Lieutenant Javier Aguilar. Will just mention briefly before we do that, in terms of agenda management, as you indicated at the beginning of the meeting, we're hoping to finish our meeting in time for people to watch the vice presidential debate. I would point out, as it relates to item 5 on the agenda, staff's request would be that the committee just receive this report that's coming forward at the request of the chair from the Public Works Department. And then if there's any subsequent questions, we can always bring the item back. But maybe as far as today, the committee could essentially receive that report. But let me at this time turn it over to Police Chief John Perez.
Thank you, City Manager, and I'm here joined by
Chief, may I please have a motion from the committee to file the review of Timco Street Sweeper Operator Safety? I think the suggestion that the city manager has provided is a wise one.
So move.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Been moved and properly second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Please proceed, Chief John Perez.
Yes, I'm joined today by Lieutenant Javier Aguilar and Dr. Eric Zahakian from PUSD, Assistant Superintendent. Thank you for being here. They'll present. This is a long journey. We made a commitment to get back into our school district a couple of years ago and try to provide prevention and intervention in a non-enforcement role with some consideration for active shooter and mass casualty training for school personnel. So this journey has taken us here on a federal grant and the work by the school district and the teamship that we have together in getting this done. So today you'll hear that effort and today's grant, and hopefully we can move forward from this point. So with that, I'll give it to Lieutenant Aguilar to begin.
Good afternoon. My name is Javier Aguilar. I'm with the Police Department. I'll be presenting today Project Prevent for Community Youth with Dr. Sahakian from the Pasadena Unified School District. The school district had reached out to the police department to establish a new collaboration to teach the curriculum that will assist in building a foundation for our youth. Since 2014, PPD hasn't been able to impact our youth at our schools as mentors and role models. There are many challenges why this hasn't occurred. PPD is limited to calls for service and suppression activities rather than prevention and mitigation that will support the reduction of youth violence and build trustworthy relationships between the community and the police. Next, I'll have Dr. Sahakian come up and he'll discuss our goals, objectives, and programs.
Thank you, Lieutenant Aguilar. Thank you, Mayor Tornick, Chair Kennedy, Vice Mayor Hampton for this opportunity. Thank you, Chief Perez and Lieutenant Aguilar for your unwavering support. Pasadena Unified School District received a Project Prevent grant from the U.S. Department of Education that was awarded summer of 2019. We apply for grants in the areas of student social emotional well-being and student mental health. Our school board actually approved the acceptance of the award back in October of 2019. There are specific goals and objectives that you see on your screen. There are 5 in particular. This is the overarching goals of the grant. The grant spans 5 years, encompassing close to $4.2 million over the 5-year span to PUSD. The goals and objectives increase access to school-based counseling services to address trauma. I know some of us have been discussing trauma-informed care, as well as students experiencing anxiety. Enhancing social emotional support for students to help address the effects of violence. We know that 1 out of 6 students nationally have experienced trauma on some level. Provide conflict resolution and mentoring services to prevent future violence. Create a safe and improved school environment which will lend itself to improved academic achievement. And increased family and community engagement. We know, statistically speaking, with family involvement, student achievement increases. In particular, the Project Prevent and Pasadena Police Department, the grant funds support PPD's community relations section for 5 years, like I mentioned. There will be one prevention officer that will deliver the Department of Justice Gang Resistance and Education Training, GREAT for short, to our middle school students that are identified as vulnerable. The prevention officer will facilitate the GREAT summer program with students that have been identified. Parents are also part of this component through the GREAT Families curriculum. The prevention officer will deliver aggression replacement training, ART for short, to at-risk students. This is a formal training, evidence-based training that the prevention officer will go through. Our social workers at Pasadena Unified School District have also been trained in ART. Prevention officer will utilize something that's called check-in and check-out. This is part of our behavior RTI, response to intervention strategies, checking in with students and how they're doing throughout the course of the school day, school week, school year. Prevention officer will provide mentorship and advocacy to at-risk students to continue the support. Additional grant funding training for PPD. The list that you see in front of you on this slide, this training will be provided by my team at Pasadena Unified School District. These workshops and trainings are evidence-based in nature, and this was part of our narrative in terms of our grant application. We'll be training the prevention officer in positive behavior intervention and supports, PBIS for short, response to intervention, tiered intervention supports based on student needs, restorative practices, which involve conflict resolution, social emotional learning curriculum, early warning signs, what to look for self-harm or harm of others, suicide prevention, anti-bullying at the school sites, and like I mentioned earlier, a tier 1 support called check-in and check-out to help facilitate the mentorship.
Excuse me, Dr. Shakian.
Yes, sir.
City manager, I'm receiving a text that says that the community is having difficulty hearing, that the sound is overlapping somehow. I don't know how that to be. Is there any way for you, city manager, to have staff look at this issue as we continue our meeting?
We will check with KPAS. The audio seems okay here in the council chambers, but staff is consulting with the Pasadena media staff right now.
Thank you, and sorry about that, Superintendent. Please proceed.
Thank you. Additional Project Prevent programs provided by PUSD. This will be unrelated to PPD and the prevention officer, but this is in relation to the scope of work. We have a case manager to route students and families to the specific supports that I've indicated. We are expanding therapeutic mental health services for students that have been identified at risk, as well as families and parents that qualify for what we call wraparound services. Students identified with substance use disorder will be receiving substance use disorder treatment, and that is written into the grant as well. A safe dates curriculum in order to cultivate and be aware of what healthy relationships look like. Seeking safety curriculum, it's another violence prevention curriculum that PUSD will be delivering at our school sites, as well as domestic violence support intervention when that risk is identified amongst families. With that, I'll turn it back over to Lieutenant Aguilar. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. So through the grant funding received by the school district, PPD has been provided the opportunity to receive training in various programs that will allow us to meet the need of at-risk youth in our community through prevention, relationship building, and the promotion of safety. 5 members of PPD's Community Relations Section attended the first scheduled training last week for the GREAT program. Once again, the Gang Resistance Education and Training. Upcoming training will also include the GREAT families, ART, the active shooter mass casualty first aid, and ART, again, is for the aggression replacement training, which is a cognitive behavioral intervention program that helps chronically aggressive youth, those involved in gang, students at risk for probation, and those suspended for violent behavior. The goal here is to improve their social skills, moral reasoning to better manage anger and reduce aggressive behavior. PPD officers will receive training in active shooter and mass casualty first aid to help improve school security and mitigate identified threats. GREAT is an evidence-based intervention program that serves all students regardless of risk level. The goal here is to prevent negative or violent behavior and enhance student knowledge, skills of positive behavior. It is specifically focused on reducing gang membership, developing a positive relationship with law enforcement. This 13-week curriculum will be implemented at all PUSD middle schools. Some of the topics that would be included in this curriculum will be defining gang and violence, being part of a community, setting goals, decision-making, communication skills, active listening and empathy, refusing techniques, peer pressure, anger management, and conflict resolution. The main objectives of this program are prevention, intervention, and developing positive relationships between youth and law enforcement. There are 2 additional components to GREAT. You have your GREAT Families, which is a 6-session family curriculum designed to strengthen communities by facilitating cooperative family relationships and connection. The last program is your GREAT Summer, which adds structure to summer months, provides an opportunity to enhance social skills, and offers alternatives to gang involvement, such as field trips and sporting events. And our last slide here, the only thing pending here so far is an approved MOU, a memorandum of understanding with PUSD. And lastly, we will record tangible evidence through data collection, evaluations to measure the success of the programs. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Lieutenant Javier Aguilar and Assistant Superintendent Sahakian. Excuse me for butchering your name earlier. Are there any questions from my colleague, Vice Mayor Hampton, Mayor Terry Tornick? Hearing no questions.
I'm sorry, I have a question.
Vice Mayor Hampton.
So it sounds like a really great program. I just want to understand, how do you identify students and who does the identification? Is it the police department that identifies them, or is it the Pasadena Unified School District that identifies them, and what's the criteria?
Thank you, Vice Mayor Hampton. The school district will go ahead and identify students for the GREAT program. For instance, the middle school students that will be identified are vulnerable when it comes to lack of attendance, for example, behavioral office referrals, truancy, not necessarily being attached in terms of relationship with the school site, with any adult on campus, hence the mentorship piece of Project Prevent. So PUSD will be able to identify these with the data that we collect internally, and then we'll have the case manager from PUSD to refer out as needed based on need.
I'm sorry, Mr. Sahakian. I was just trying to figure out, is there like a graph sheet of what that entails that you guys could send to the council?
We have the PowerPoint, but if there's additional information that the council will request, I'm happy to provide.
That would be great. And then also, I want to ask a question about trauma. What is it called? I think it's called trauma-informed. Say that again.
Trauma-informed care.
Yes. Okay. Perfect. Thank you. So I know K. Ron Valentine. When I was a school board member, I presented a couple times about some of the programs and things that K. Ron Valentine did. And I was wondering, have you guys reached out to K. Ron about this at all? And how he could be engaged?
Thank you for that, Vice Mayor Hampton. Trauma-informed care is an overarching umbrella of our social emotional components at PUSD. This initiative has been ongoing for at least a good 4 years. Our school sites have all been trained in trauma-informed care in terms of identification of trauma in students and then referring out to the proper counselors and mental health resources that we have. It is a collaborative effort. We have community partners such as Young and Healthy, our internal social workers. We have a partnership and an MOU with the University of Southern California School of Social Work. But I have met with Mr. Valentine in the past, and I'm happy to reach out to him as well to see how we could go ahead and embed his efforts within PUSD.
Yeah, I only mention him because, you know, and I appreciate all of the expertise that you have mentioned prior, you know, but sometimes academics don't necessarily have the connection as people who have lived it. If that makes sense. I'm trying to.
That's correct, Vice Mayor.
I'm trying to massage my words.
Vice Mayor, I know which words you're trying to use there, and you're right. There's a balance of the common sense approach and the theoretical that we put into the school systems on what we do. To your prior questions, the areas we're going to focus on, so you're aware, is defining gang and violence, being part of a community, setting goals for yourself, healthy decision making. We're talking about communication, active listening, and empathy, refusing techniques, which are very important when it comes to areas in school. We want young people to be stronger, as well as peer pressure techniques, anger management, and conflict resolution skills. And we as a police department will come in a prevention intervention mode. It is not enforcement at all, but balanced with the other resources at the school with some of these theoretical approaches. It will work well, and it's been a proven measurable with empirical evidence in the past. In other places, this has been used.
So if you come in with that approach, Chief, I appreciate that that comment. If you come in with that approach, I remember when I was a school board member that part of the reason why there was a push to remove police officers from the school sites is because some school sites seem to receive more interactions with police officers than other school sites, and it was self-initiated versus the school district calling. Self-initiated meaning the police officers decided to engage with the students. And I remember the students that I talked to that, you know, felt that they did nothing wrong. I wasn't there or anything like that. Felt like they did nothing wrong, and that the police constantly engaged them in a not productive manner.
Yeah, I couldn't go back and go case by case on those. I would debate.
Right. No, I know.
I would debate some of that, but some of it I'm sure is accurate as you say. But so this is school based. Will be referenced and will be requested as needed. And so we're trying not to overdo it in any one school. But again, it will be based on an approach by the school district, the schools, and the staff to decide how best to approach. So we will be more hands off of that unless they want to involve us or ask our advice on any of these.
And so, so the police officer, so basically the police department is actually not going to be on campus. It's more of the engaging with students that are potentially truant and maybe.
Yeah, that's a fair way to look at it. We're not going to be an enforcement role. We're not going to be patrolling schools. That's not the intent. And you're not going to see police officers in uniform. We call this prevention officers, for lack of a better term. If you remember the school resource officers of the old days, I served as one for a while, and you just have a regular dress and you enact with the school, and you get the curriculum done as requested.
Oh, okay. So our officers are going to be in plain clothes.
Yes, professional dress, something that connects with the young people, as you said, that creates that natural connection.
Perfect. Well, thank you. I would really hope that the police department as well as PUSD would really reach out to K-Ron and have some of those discussions. I think he's an impressive young man, and I'm not necessarily K-Ron's. I just know K-Ron because I've seen a couple of his seminars and as well as been in one of his classes, and I thought it was really informative, and our young people really connected well with him.
Absolutely, Vice Mayor, and one of the intents is to come back to public safety and provide um, some measurement of how we're doing as we proceed with this. That'd be very important to be transparent and let the community know how this is transforming over time.
I do have to say that I appreciate that the officers are going to be in plain clothes, and I believe that that is normalizing our officers and letting people know that they are regular people just like me and you. And I, for one, am supportive of this because when I was in school, there were police officers that were in uniform but had great relationships with everybody. And Rodney Wallace happened to be one of them. And that's the reason I mentioned his name again. But I just want to say that I think that with that engagement versus being engaged because the police are being called out and actually being in the community and talking to young people builds relationships. And so I am appreciative of this and grateful for our police and PUSD working together doing this.
We thank you for that, and we thank you for the support as well.
Thank you very much. Mayor, if I can, Steve Madison, Councilmember Madison has joined us. I'd like to give him an opportunity to speak if he needs to on this issue. Then I will come to you.
Sure. No, I'm fine, John. Thank you, though. Thank you for the opportunity, but I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor?
My question is, this is a 13-week curriculum. I'm not understanding how does this get, maybe Eric can help me understand, how is this presented? Is it during the school day? Is it after school? Are the kids who are enrolled in this, what's the total number of anticipated enrollees in the program?
It is a 13-week curriculum. The officers have gone through the training, like Lieutenant Aguilar mentioned. There's a virtual component now because of PUSC being 100% distance learning. There really is not a cap of students that could go through the training, but they'll be identified as we progress through the school year and throughout the 5 years of the grant. So we anticipate a large volume of students, and this will be targeted at the middle school level.
But when does it happen, Eric? I mean, does it happen during the school day? Does it
Yes, sir.
happen after school?
Yes, sir. The 13-week curriculum is for one session, and what we're talking about right now is the GRADE program. There's also the R program, which considers actually the topic is more anti-aggression. So we can technically be teaching this 13-week session at different classes, depending on, we haven't yet discussed this with Dr. Sahakian, but we're going to go ahead and put something together. But each session is 13 weeks, and it covers those 10 topics that we talked about. Basically, we're going to be there from the beginning of the school year to the end of the school year. It's going to cover the 3 programs that we talked about. And then at the end of the year, during the summer, we're also going to incorporate that summer program to allow kids to do something else instead of just hanging out or not having anything to do. So what we're trying to do is encompass this entire year with these 3 different programs, including the summer program. So we'll take up different classes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, we have been going since 4. We started right on time. We will only be able to get to one of the
Chair,
items.
excuse me,
Yes?
Chair. We do have public comment on this item.
How many items?
We have 11 public comments.
Oh, well, we have to take those, so please share. We'd like to hear what the public
No, 11.
has to share with us on this topic.
Leah Bartels, Glendale resident. I beg the safety committee to not subject students to police presence in schools. It does not make our children safer. It only exposes them to early and often to the threat of incarceration. The most effective kind of gang intervention would be actual resources and programs for these students to keep them engaged and enriched. James Clark, Pasadena resident. Police in our schools will not help our community's children and is a gross waste of resources that could be invested in meaningful programs for our youth. Police don't mentor youth, they intimidate them. Let's invest in programs that allow our schools to thrive, not programs that allow people to bring guns into the school to control children. DT, Pasadena resident. As a parent in PUSD and an alumni from PUSD schools, I do not believe that having police in schools will help in preventing neighborhood violence, also known as gang violence. I believe in retroactive practices, and the school board should be oh my God, excuse me, centering retroactive justice in school culture and in their curriculum. Having school police on campus directly affects students in a negative way and contributes to the school to prison pipeline. I would recommend the school board to reach out to nonprofits who are already doing preventative and intervention work with young people or create a task force for retroactive justice practitioners and other health and wellness counselors that fully understand the cognitive and developmental stages that our schoolers go through. Our community does not trust the police. This school board does not understand the needs of the community. Adriana Bautista, Pasadena resident. Not every school even has a nurse in PUSD. There are so many programs that care for youth and have stronger prevention methods that yield positive results. Yet the city of Pasadena is looking to invest money in PPD being in the schools. This is wrong. City Council, vote no on this. Do not let Mermel and PPD continue to bully you out of your own political power. If any of you care about education and the safety of students, you need to vote no on this. The school to prison pipeline is real, and Pasadena students deserve better support than police officers. They deserve competent staff who are well trained with appropriate certifications. Our police officers are not even required to have a college degree or any such certification that school teachers, counselors, and other such staff train and pay years to invest in. Furthermore, PPD trains each other to cover up the murder, which are not good role models. Budget this funding with the recommendation of well-respected teachers and school staff who care about the well-being of their students and are working towards equality in the classroom environment. To oblige schools, bring police in schools is a disservice to our youth. They deserve better. Michelle White. Project Prevent appears to reinstall a significant police presence in PUSD middle school campuses, a presence which our local ACLU chapter has fought for years to eliminate. The grant in question places the cart before the horse. PUSD and the PPD have sought funding before providing the public with comprehensive information on how this program can be prevented from becoming a school to prison pipeline, as was one of the problems with the prior PPD presence. Prior to ACLU involvement, PUSD personnel wrongfully referred students to the police department for criminal processing rather than subjecting wayward students to school disciplinary treatment. As a result of ACLU intervention, the MOU between the PPD and PUSD was modified, and the police presence on campus was greatly reduced. I am aware of no analysis of how the prior changes impacted the pipeline or the teacher's administrator's treatment of students' disciplinary actions. PUSD is too reliant upon police officers to act as role models for students. There are many other professionals that should be called upon to provide examples to students. Our children should learn that they can grow up to be other than police officers. They should be given exposure to more than officers. Julieta, Pasadena resident. I am a mother of a sixth grader at McKinley. He is enrolled at the PALS after school program. My son is growing with a healthy relation towards police officers, but to have a police at school, it's completely different scenario. What our kids need urgently are librarians, nurses, art classes, teacher aides, music programs. Please, councilmen, do the right thing for our children. Let them grow with a free spirit, without a feeling of having a police officer looking over their shoulder, making them feel like balance. Please, let's do the right thing for the kids. Thank you.
David Chavez, Pasadena resident. I'm writing as a parent of a PUSD student with my disapproval of PPD being placed into middle schools. And I am calling on the Police Public Safety Committee and City Council to intervene and deny the use of grant money to contract PPD for the Gang Resistance Education and Training Program. There has been over 20 years of peer-reviewed research that show that police in schools do not serve as a deterrent to violence or gang affiliation, but instead place more young Black, brown, and poor students into the school to prison pipeline. In 2016, a study by criminologists at the University of Missouri St. Louis conducted research using over 7 years of data from the so-called, quote, GREAT program, and found it actually putting more young people into the criminal justice system. Even its origins should call into question the impact of this program. It was created in the early 1990s by the Phoenix Police Department and ATF. This is not a student, teacher, or counselor program, but instead a program to criminalize student and community. Again, I call on you to terminate contract with PUSD and PPD and instead invest in counselors, intervention workers, and other supports. Chris Okershauser, Pasadena. Is this the first public presentation of the, quote, GREAT program? I find it odd that PPD comes to the committee and the public after the grant was secured, not before. We don't really know how the program has worked elsewhere. It doesn't sound like the kind of change in police work that the protests this summer were all about. Sure, police know about gangs, but are they the best professionals to talk with youth in school about it? Los Angeles Unified has recently said, quote, no to police in schools because of the school to prison pipeline, quote, school to prison pipeline. Around 2008, Martin Gordon, Michelle White, and I worked with the school board to remove police from the schools and require administrators to address behavioral problems. Now the PD wants them back. Is this the best use of police? Are they the best professionals to be educating youth about resisting gangs? Why don't we delay the start to give the public and the committee time to learn about the pros and cons of police educating, training, and monitoring youth? The, quote, school to prison pipeline is, end quote, is still a pipeline. Let's make sure we don't start it up again in PUSD schools. Jasmine Richards, Pasadena. I do not believe police should be in schools. Students need youth counselors and therapists, more after school and youth-led school programs. They need people who are well-trained for youth, not police who target and profile them. Police presence in school is not beneficial for students. It creates anxiety and PTSD. I was a part of PAL, League with Officer Ward and Officer Thompson. They had a positive influence on me. This was a youth program with officers who played basketball with us, as well as mentoring program. Instead of funding police, you should give that money to the Rose program so youth can have more summer jobs. Neftali, Pasadena. I believe the finances proposed should not all just go to police. There are more important needs for schools, for example, nurses, psychologists, and nutritionists. Hashtag more support, less cops. And Derby, Pasadena. This agenda item is disgraceful. Our children do not need cops in their schools. They need healthcare services, nurses, counselors, and so much more. The fact that Pasadena City Council would even suggest that we dedicate more city resources to policing children in schools when they're not even in session in the midst of a global health crisis baffles me. I urge the City Council to redirect their focus and the city's budget to the services that our children desperately need right now. Please do not move forward with increasing police presence in schools. That is the last thing our children need right now. Remember that this is an election year, and many of us are watching the actions of City Council members and the mayor as you demonstrate your priorities in serving the people of Pasadena. The Pasadena Police Force is already oversaturated in funding and highly unpredictable in their use of force. Do not succumb more children to the dangers of this police force. Care for them by providing in-school services that support the healthy development of our children. That concludes public comment.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Are there any comments? I think we're going to have to adjourn in a couple of minutes and not get to item 3 and 4. The city manager has informed me that he is okay with bringing those matters back to us at our next specially called meeting, which is the 21st.
And actually, council member, that will be well, we could do the time earlier, it's a special meeting, but that would be our same regular day. We would appreciate if we could push these items to the 21st. They're important matters. We don't want to give them short shrift.
And aren't all of our meetings special meetings? No?
Yes, I misspoke a little bit. That will be our regular meeting days are the first Monday and the third Wednesday. The 21st is the third Wednesday, but we will likely do an earlier time than the normal 6 o'clock starting time. But if it turned out, if we did wait till 6 o'clock, it would be a regular meeting. Although I see the city attorney shaking his head. Remote. Oh, I guess the fact that it's remote makes it special anyway. It'll be a special meeting, sir, irrespective of time. My apologies.
All right. Thank you very much. As it relates to the comments from the community, I'd like to know from staff, is the contemplated use the only use that can be provided for under the grant?
Councilmember Kennedy, Mr. Sahakian and the police department have stepped out of the room, but my understanding is yes, it's limited to these activities. It's the PUSD that received the grant, not the city.
Oh, I see. Okay. So this is not a joint submission of a request for proposals or responding to a NOFA, Notice of Funds Availability, by both bodies. It's just the PUSD inviting.
We likely included a letter of support, and we're likely, I would need to do some research, but it's likely that as part of the response in response to the Department of Education's, whether it was a NOFA or some other notification, it's likely that the police department's participation was included in the application, and ultimately that was awarded by the Department of Education to the PUSD. So the key point being the city council doesn't have the ability to move these funds. They're not fungible. From our perspective, they are a grant. Any expenditure of the funds would need to comply with the program guidelines established by the Department of Education.
I would ask my colleagues if it would be acceptable to them in a unanimous fashion that we have further conversation, debate about this matter at the city council as opposed to this body taken an action, given the level of concerns that have been raised.
Well, and
I'm more than-
Councilmember, this is just an information item this evening. No council action is required. It was just to update the committee and the community as to the program and the participation of the police department partnering with PUSD.
Well, my feeling is that the council, if it wanted to, could direct staff in a different direct staff to move in another direction. Is that accurate or not?
You certainly could direct me to direct the police chief not to participate in the program. I don't know if that creates jeopardy for the PUSD as to whether they would lose the grant funding. But if you want additional staff follow-up on this, I'm happy to do so.
My point is, I think all of the council needs to at least be brought up to date on what we are doing, because the grant, in some respect, in terms of when it was awarded, is stale. This happened in 20 what?
I don't have the, I don't see a date on the presentation, sir.
I believe the testimony from staff was that the grant was awarded in 2019, but certainly not in 2020. So the question becomes, for some, and some I've already raised it, why hasn't that come to us earlier? I don't want to get into that conversation. I just want all of the members of the council fully informed. And I'd ask you, how might we best do that as the CEO of the company?
We could certainly schedule this item for an upcoming council meeting as an information item.
That would be acceptable to me, and I'd like to know if that's acceptable to my colleagues.
I actually don't know if that, personally, I don't know if that's necessary, because did the school district vote on this? It sounds like the school board had to have supported this.
Presumably, the school district would have, because they would have received the funds, and so they would have needed to appropriate the dollars and likely enter into the grant agreement.
And if the school district didn't use Pasadena Police Department, who would they use? The sheriff?
Well, no, I wasn't saying that.
I'm asking a question. Not asking you, sorry, Mr. Kennedy. Councilman Kennedy.
Go ahead.
Possibly, or perhaps the scope of work would not include that element. I mean, we can either schedule the item for a council presentation, or if it pleases the committee, I can pull together some additional information, send that out in the city manager's newsletter, which is publicly available, so people can get an understanding of sort of how this grant came to be, what the role of the school district is, what the city's role is, and then if for some reason the city council wanted to have further discussion on it, then we could take the matter up. Happy to proceed in whatever way the committee desires.
So there's really no role for us to play outside of, or we just say we don't want to participate, or we're already participating? I'm just trying to understand, like, what are our options?
Right. If I were to do some more
Sounds-
follow-up, work, that's exactly the question I would answer for you.
All right, and I would just say, I listened to all the public comment, and I think that there was one public comment that had mentioned that the GREAT program had negative outcomes in other places. And I would like to, when you do that extra follow-up, if you could supply that information, or if that information even exists.
Sure. If the committee wants some additional, to borrow a term from the mayor, exposition on this, I'm happy to do that.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I might, I mean, I was really very sad to hear. I was sad to hear some of the comments and the referencing to the school to prison pipeline. I thought it was made absolutely clear in the presentation that the police are not, this program does not reintroduce police back into the middle schools in a security function. This is purely in an educational function. This comes as part, I mean, it's interesting to me that at the same time that people are saying that what we need is to build better bridges between the community between youth and the police department, so that both the community learns to trust the police and the police get to know the community. This seems to me to exactly address that kind of concern and to give the opportunity for that kind of two-way communication and trust to develop. And I think that what Eric Sahakian went through in terms on page 6 of his, have the staff, have they left, Steve? Is that what's happened?
Yes, they stepped out when the matter was concluded. I can see if I can pull the chief back, but.
Okay, well, I mean,
Mayor,
what Eric, if I just have to finish one thought. What Eric went through was the list on page 6 of all the programs provided by PUSD that address a lot of the issues that the public comment makers were suggesting in terms of therapeutic mental health services and seeking safety curriculum and even domestic violence. I think that these comments were misplaced in many cases. I do agree that the appropriate course of action now is to have the manager provide some exposition to the council, try to respond to some of these concerns, and then we can decide if we need to schedule it for the entire council.
that's acceptable. Do I hear,
Motion's not required. I mean, I think that the manager knows he's got to provide some more information both to the council and to the community so that some of these concerns can be addressed.
Yeah, I think I
well,
got it.
Yeah, I have to say the same thing. I mean, I was taken aback by some of the comments because we're talking about building a bridge and building trust and having officers engage in a way that is not, self-initiated or, engage in a way where someone is not calling the police on them. I think as a youth, if I had a police officer that I knew, and something happened to me, I feel like I would be able to call out to the person that I actually knew and someone that I have a relationship with, someone I trusted, to help me in my situation. So, I was really, when I heard the comment, the one comment that did step out to me the most was the one that said, this great program had negative outcomes in other places. And that's the only one that I'm really responding to. The rest of them, even some comments mentioned of officers that were engaged, officers by name that engaged them that were positive role models, and those officers have since retired. But the only way we're going to make officers those positive role models is putting more officers back in those places so that they could be those positive role models. If you keep them out of the classroom, you keep them away from kids, then all they're going to do is their job and that is typically just engaging. In most incidents, those are not particularly the most friendly confrontations that you have, or let me say introductions you have to police. So if we could build positive interactions and the police officers go in and, and it's just one or two and they're teaching a class, that's a positive interaction. It doesn't sound, from the presentation, I got nothing out of the presentation that insisted that police officers were going to be on school campuses, basically profiling kids.
that is, Vice Mayor?
That's it. I mean, but I am very serious about, the trauma-informed, I don't know what that is, I guess, training, trauma-informed training to police officers, as well as to our, talking to our young people, because, I would say everything I think of police officers as an equation, right? Our police department as a math equation. And the only constant in this equation is our police officers, because they're trained. Every person that you interact with is your variable, right? So you just never know how they're going to react. And so I think that if officers knew what the traumas are and how they could potentially be triggering one of those traumas, I think it would go a long way to producing a more community-based and a more sensitive mode of policing, or not, I don't want to call it policing, but peace. They're peace officers, being peace officers. That's exactly what they are. They're peace officers. So,
Better outcomes.
yeah, way better outcomes. So,
Again,
thank you.
you're welcome. Again, I have no public schools in my district. This is a matter that the full council needs to be informed about. I have had nothing but positive experience with the police when I was in middle school and in high school. Officer Das, Audra Bowman, the first female on the Pasadena Police Department, and many of you remember Dave Jacobs. The point is that the full council needs to be aware of what's taking place. And we need to inform them, particularly that it's only an informational item here at Public Safety.
Okay.
And I expect the city manager to do that. I think that's prudent. Thank you. With that, I entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved. Second?
Second. Everybody have a great night. I know the debate is gonna be better than it was the last time.
Easy, Ted.
Staff and my colleagues.
Goodbye.